Welcome to Spacevidcast 4.20 for Friday, July 29th, 2011. We are internet sensation. I almost said space sensations.
We are space sensations.
We're space sensations.
Benjamin and Carrie Ann Higginbotham.
There you go. We are actually critical space items, as it says in the banner. See, right down there. Bam.
There we are.
There we are. We'll be your hosts this evening, and this will be the last time we broadcast from the Crow River Coffee Company here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, because we're moving to LA, which is going to be awesome. We don't know when the next show is going to be. We're not going away, but we need to set up a new studio space down there and get everything kind of rejiggered. So we're going to, the live shows will be gone for a while. We are planning to try to continue to do space pods. We've got Jason down at Kennedy Space Center. Then we'll have the LA stuff, and we've got, of course, Tim Bailey, who works with us as well. And anyone else who sends in content. And great people like Rick Hanton, for example, who's helping us cover the New Space 2011 conference, which you can watch live throughout the weekend right here on Spacevidcast.com, and we'll try to get those archives online for you as well. But let's go ahead and jump right into it, shall we? I have a great amount of respect for not only NASA's astronauts who, we have said on air we disagree with their opinion that they feel that NASA should be moving towards a heavy launch vehicle. We've said we don't agree with them. Doesn't mean I don't respect them. And much the same way, I have a great deal of respect for Neil deGrasse Tyson, but I absolutely disagree with an assessment. Here's a video that was on Gizmodo. This was a speech that he gave a while ago. Edited down and some music added and some voiceover stuff added to it as well, talking about our space program. And he was asked the question, do you think we should, what do you think of the Obama administration basically canceling Constellation? How do you feel about the new direction of NASA, I think is really what the question was. And this is a much prettier version of his response. Here you go.
Let's start out by asking, what is NASA to us as a nation? What is NASA? If I had a nickel for every time someone said, why are we spending money up there when we have problems down here? At some point, you gotta look up. In the current plan, it promotes the commercial access to low Earth orbit, a couple of 100 miles up where the space station and space shuttle goes. Low Earth orbit is no longer a space frontier. The original Space Act from 1958 says NASA needs to advance a space frontier. Low Earth orbit is to boldly go where hundreds have gone before. It's not a frontier anymore. Move NASA to the next step. What does the program allow? It says we're not going to the moon anymore. Maybe we'll go to Mars one day. I don't know when, but let's work on some technology that might enable that someday. That worries me, because without a plan to go somewhere outside of low Earth orbit, we've got no force operating on the educational pipeline of America. NASA, as best as I can judge, is a force of nature like none other. I have never seen, with all due respect to other federal agencies, I have never seen 8th graders sit up in their chair and say, when I grow up, I want to be an NSF researcher or an NIH researcher. With all due respect to those agencies, they do important scientific work, but they are unknown and invisible at the age where people choose what they want to be when they grow up. And so what worries me is that if you take away the manned program, a program which, if you advance frontiers, heroes are made, okay? There's a force operating on the educational pipeline that will stimulate the formation of scientists, engineers, mathematicians, and technologists, the STEM research fields. You birth these people into society. They're the ones that make tomorrow come. The foundations of economies in the 21st century, will issue forth from investments we make in science and technology. That we've known since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. We have known that those nations that embrace those investments are those that lead the world. America is fading right now. Fading. By the way, how much does NASA cost? It's a half a penny on a dollar. Did you know that? The people who say, why are we spending money up here, down? I ask them, how much do you think we're spending? They say 5 cents, 10 cents on a dollar. It's a half a penny. A half a penny. that buys the space station, the space shuttles, all the NASA centers, the rovers, the Hubble telescope, all the astronauts, all of that. Nobody's dreaming about tomorrow anymore. NASA knows how to dream about tomorrow. If the funding can accommodate it, the funding can empower it, the funding can enable it. Yeah, you need good teachers, no doubt about it, but the teachers come and go because I go to the next grade. Teachers can help light a flame, but I need something to keep the flame fanned. It's about the effect of NASA on who and what we are as a nation, what we have been as a nation, perhaps for a while there took it for granted. I see the most powerful particle accelerators in some other country, the fastest trains are built by Germany and are running in China right now. I see our infrastructure collapsing, no one dreaming about tomorrow. And everybody thinks they can put a Band-Aid on one problem or another. The most powerful agency on the dreams of a nation is currently underfunded to do what it needs to be doing. And that's making dreams come true. And at half a penny on a dollar, how much would you pay for the universe?
Now that's certainly a compelling and passionate argument, and many of the points I absolutely agree with. We do need to dream and look forward. But I think there's a misperception that only NASA can do this, and that NASA is the place that everyone turns to for. NASA is space, and that's just
space equals NASA.
That's just simply not true anymore. And I agree with the fundamental concept that we need a place to look and dream and instill awe and wonder in our youth. But why does that have to be NASA? They've certainly got a brand and a history there, but I would argue that what NASA has become is not what NASA was in the 60s. NASA is a large political organization. The people I know that work at NASA are amazing, fantastic people. But let's take a look at the Space Launch System, SLS, just as an example. These are some preliminary timelines as what NASA feels is going to take to get SLS off the ground. SLS is the replacement to the space shuttle transportation, or the shuttle transportation system. STS, which we just had. So you heard STS-135, shuttle transportation system. So now we start over with our new program, SLS-1. So we've got a nice little infographic here. Thank you. The first launch is 2,000 at minimum. 2,348 days away in December of 2017. The launch after that, SLS-2, is at minimum 4 years after the first launch, August of 2021.
Wow.
Consider that for a moment. How does that continue to inspire our youth? This is where we're at. Now you could say, all right, you know what, we'll give more money to NASA, and maybe that will increase the timeline. But let's be frank, they're playing political games right now. They're trying to avoid building this. We joke, and we call it the Senate launch system. This isn't a rocket designed by rocket scientists. This is a rocket designed by senators. That does not inspire our youth. Let me show you, now I need to do a full disclosure. The reason we're moving to LA, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, is I have been hired by SpaceX. The views expressed on this show do not in any way represent anything to SpaceX, and SpaceX has not acquired Spacevidcast. We are still Spacevidcast. So we're about to air a SpaceX video. It has nothing to do with the fact that I work there. I think
Ben didn't make the video.
I didn't make the video either. So. I think this is what I think it should be. This is what I think it should be. Here you go. Check this out. That is a rocket designed by rocket scientists, not by senators. That is a real rocket that will actually be happening. They have already launched the Falcon 1 and the Falcon 9 successfully, and that's the Falcon Heavy. That's the next generation rocket. And when you start looking at what the Falcon Heavy is capable of, and what they have done in a fraction of the time that NASA can do,
Right.
that's what gets people inspired. When you grow up and say, hey, maybe I can work for a aeronautics administration, space administration that will fly once a year, that's not inspiring.
Right.
When you grow up and say, you know what, maybe I can work for a private space company and maybe one day I can go to space,
Right.
and you start dreaming of what you can do, that's where we should be focusing. The fallacy is that it has to be NASA. It does not have to be NASA. NASA can help grow the industry, and I think that should be their role. But it doesn't have to be there. And this is the sticky, weird middle point we're in right now.
Yeah.
This is the point where we have to start making a decision. Do we want to go back to what we did in the 60s, the von Braun era of only government can build rockets? Or do we want to change the industry and say, you know what, private space can do this? This is bigger than just us. We can build an entire industry. There is money to be made out there. Earlier in the show, Mealing actually in the chat room made a very good point, and I want to repeat it, which is Jobs and Wozniak didn't have an iPad on their plan when they started in their garage back in the, what was it, the 70s? This desire for a date and a destination is because people think that's how you project manage NASA. And I couldn't agree more.
There you go.
So, there's that. And I think part of the problem is that now people believe we're losing our leadership in space. We're ceding our leadership, but I think we're actually strengthening our leadership in space by doing private. And it doesn't have to just be SpaceX. They just happen to have, I think, one of the most interesting videos. It could be Blue Origin. It could be Orbital Sciences. It could be, you know what? It could be Mass and Space Systems. It could be Armadillo Aerospace. We don't know. It could be X-Core. I forgot X-Core. They're at New Space 2011. They're a Lynx vehicle.
Yep.
I mean, Virgin Galactic has talked. They've said suborbital is just a starting point.
Right.
This whole Dream Chaser, the whole industry is just doing amazing things right now. But when you focus just on NASA, you lose sight of all the amazing things that are cropping up around NASA and because of NASA. And NASA is embracing this stuff. They're not saying this stuff won't work. NASA is saying this is the future. I just don't feel like everyone's listening to them. So, all right, I realize I jumped on a giant soapbox there, but you know, I think it needs to be said, and when someone argues, now you can point them to this video and say, look at that guy spewing information. Speaking of U.S. losing leadership in space, the Hubble Space Telescope, we talked about this a little bit last week as well. The Hubble Space Telescope, I use the word replaced, and that's not the right word because it's a different form. But the James Webb Space Telescope is on the chopping block, and that is a replacement to the Hubble telescope. And there's a fantastic article on richarddawkins.net talking about how we're kind of giving up some of this leadership. And you heard Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about this as well. We canceled the Super Collider project here in the US about 20 years ago or so.
Right.
Those particle physicists moved to Europe. And they're at the LHC now because
made their own.
Yeah, that's where the world's, I believe it's the world's largest super collider is now. And so they went there. We've lost those scientists in the US. So there is that aspect of it as well. We want to keep the brain trust here. We want to keep those intelligent peoples here because they're the ones who help build industry. So you can only cut so far. I'm not saying you got to cut it out. I'm not saying we should stop it. I'm saying we should reform it. We should still do it here.
Right.
We just need to reform how we do it. But that counter to my point, that article on richarddawkins.net, which is available in our wiki if you want to get the full URL to that, is a very good read about some of the dangers of letting all of these people go and some of the dangers of letting programs like the James Webb Space Telescope go. And that's not to say that it is managed correctly or not woefully over budget or anything else.
Before QG jumps all over
I
us
know,
about it.
Quantum G in the chat room, he's going to be like, they need to get rid of their program. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just, you know, sometimes you have to do wacky stuff like that. And if you ask me one day, I'll tell you we should cancel it. And you ask me the next day.
Wacky, wild stuff.
Wacky, wild stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, while the James Webb Space Telescope might be in jeopardy, Russia actually does have us covered. We've actually got some video footage of...
This was interesting.
And it's got weird music, so we're just going to voice over the music, and I'll let you talk about this is a brand new Russian telescope that has launched to space better than Hubble. So go ahead and roll the VO video, and it's got go ahead and roll it, and I'm going to tell you, watch, here we go. Yes, that is the world's best animation.
It's like they made it in Canada.
Well, go ahead and tell them about the telescope.
Okay, so it's an ultra-powerful, quote-unquote, Russian space telescope that actually blasted off.
Now you're doing it.
Now I'm reading it. That's just terrible. July 18th. So this is already up in the air. Took off from Kazakhstan. It's 3.8-ton radio Aston. Is that correct? It's a 10-meter antenna that sends back high-resolution images to a series of ground-based stations. And the reason that this is significant is because while the mirror, it's not a mirror, what am I trying to say?
It's a radio dish.
Thank you. While the dish itself isn't gigantically huge, because it's bouncing the signal back down and sort of around, it can kind of correlate all of the images together to make one great big fantastic image. So it makes it bigger than any of the radio telescopes we have down here, even though it physically is smaller because it's combining all the images together. Does that make sense?
Yep. So this is, it's obviously different, and we keep trying to compare it to Hubble.
Right.
All of these are different than Hubble. James Webb Space Telescope is different than Hubble. Only Hubble is Hubble. Only Hubble has its particular instruments. But we're talking about the level of detail in which it can see, if that makes any sense, or here, I guess, in this case. And they're joking in the chat room, talking about how, oh yes, this one's held together by duct tape, and maybe a little bit. Maybe the Russians are very much whatever works kind of technology.
Well, you know what? If it works, then why break it, I guess.
And then here's the launch itself. I love the dramatic music. Yes. National pride! There you go. So anyhow.
One other thing really quickly is that it's going to be studying, I love that music, radio waves from stellar phenomena such as pulsars, quasars, black holes, and neutron stars.
So Russia's launching stuff.
At.
Doesn't mean that the U.S. has to launch stuff too, as long as science is progressing.
But we are launching stuff.
I meant James Webb specifically, the James Webb Space Telescope. And the nice thing about the James Webb Space Telescope, and I don't have it in this one, I should have included it. Go ahead and roll the JWST animation actually, so you can kind of see what the James Webb Space Telescope itself is. But it unfolds, and there are these ginormous mirrors on this telescope. It's an infrared telescope, but it's just absolutely huge, substantially larger than Hubble. And the surface area matters because that's more stuff you can collect, which means the more detail you can have, essentially. So, and you can see, here's an animation of the James Webb Space Telescope, or JWST, unfolding. And you can kind of see, then the sides will pop out, and the gold part that you see in the middle, those are the mirrors.
Yeah, those hexagons? The
hexagonal objects. So I don't know. I know that there are people in the chat room who thinks it should go away and it's mismanaged, but if it does officially go away, I'm gonna miss this telescope. I mean, this was kind of a cool thing, and it's not like Constellation that was a paper rocket. This actually has hardware that was built. I mean,
Stephanie is saying it's a transformer. It is a transformer. It goes up as one thing and it comes back as another.
I believe it is more than meets the eye, actually.
Ooh.
Absolutely.
Well then.
And speaking of other things that I think I just did 2 stories where I said "speaking of" in a row.
I think you did, but that's all right. Nobody else noticed, but you until you pointed it out.
And then I pointed it out, and that makes it even better. China is getting ready to launch their first part of their space station up the Tingshao 1.
Oh my goodness, no, this is terrible. We have to look this up. Keep talking.
Well, no, I mean that's pretty much it. So we've got Tingzhong 1. There you go. So here's some footage, and this is, I understand it, is actually, so this is obviously still on Earth, but this is kind of the interconnector portion of everything.
Right, and it's 2 separate, almost like modules that they're going to connect up in space. They're going up. In the 3rd and 4th quarters of 2011 on the Shenzhou 8, which is very, very cool. And the other thing I thought was kind of interesting is that there are 300 flags from the International Astronautical Federation that are being taken on the Tianzhong spacecraft that they're slated to be brought back to Earth by a Chinese astronaut when he completes China's first piloted rendezvous and docking link-up next year, so 2012. And the same exact flags were already sent to the ISS via the Russian TMA-20 piloted spacecraft and then brought down on Endeavour.
Now hang on, Pete just said is wondering why he's the only one who's completely cool with China doing its thing here. And I'm completely cool with China doing its thing too. I'm not.
Again, space doesn't equal NASA.
Yeah, no, and it doesn't even equal U.S. I mean, space is open for all of humanity, and I look forward to China really pushing forward and building a space station, but more than building a space station, going to the moon, going to Mars, and going beyond and forcing humanity forward. It doesn't have to be NASA that does that.
Well, not to mention that for all the people who are like, well, USA has to be #1, NASA has to be #1, blah, blah, blah. All they need is a kick in the pants. Here it is. Kick in the pants.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got some pretty pictures and things that we found on the moon.
Transformers, possibly?
No. Stay with us. We'll be right back. More than meets the eye.
Meters, 27 meters, 20 meters. Standing by for touchdown.
Awesome.
Awesome, Kessler on Mars.
And you can get that
Mission
now.
to Mars, Andrew Kessler, thank you.
I should have done a Mars story. I don't have a Mars story. That's why we didn't do one.
That's all right.
Oh, well.
People are going to Mars.
In the
Yay.
1960s, when we went to the moon, or late 60s, we had to send a lot of probes up to the moon to kind of see what was going on, where we wanted to land. Much like we did in 2009 with LRO, we wanted to send a craft around the moon to get more detailed information. Well, in the 1960s, one of the spacecrafts took this magnificent photo. And that is of the moon.
How pretty is that?
Yep.
From the 60s, you guys.
And then it crashed into the dark side of the moon. Yeah. Now, because we were going to go back to the moon with Constellation, we sent the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or LRO, back to the moon in 2009, and it took this picture. That, we believe, is the crash site, and I realize it looks like the moon.
Yep, looks like the moon.
There's more moon.
You can see there's like that kind of brighter white spot there with two almost, they almost look like arrows, two dark sort of arrows. And for anyone that's seen any kind of impact when you've launched your own rocket and it's fallen down to the ground, that's what an impact site kind of looks like, but on a much larger scale.
So we believe LRO has found said crashed spacecraft.
Awesome.
On the far side of the chat room yelled at me, far side of the moon, the side that does not point towards Earth. There, anymore at least.
The dark side, as it were. Thank you, Pink Floyd. I'm kind of personally hoping that there are some GLXP teams that maybe don't exactly hit their intended mark and then maybe kind of trot on over to that site and take a picture.
Click.
Because how cool would that be?
Actually, there's other cool stuff happening on that side of the moon.
Right?
It's pretty neat.
That's pretty neat.
Other neat stuff happening on the far side of the moon, such as we have found a volcano, and I'm going to admit I can loosely talk about this story at best. Hopefully some of the rocket scientists and scientists in their chat room can help me out with this one a little bit. But my understanding from what I have read and from what I've been able to gather is we did not expect to find a volcano on in this area of the moon because of how we thought the moon formed. We figured it wouldn't have formed there, and yet, boom, we think we have found one. It's in that middle picture. You can kind of see it pointing to that little
blue dot there.
Blue dot thingy right there.
It's being called a hot spot on the far side of the moon, and it's that seems to reveal a small volcanic province created by the upswelling of silicic magma. The unusual location of the province and the surprising composition of the lava that formed apparently offers a tantalizing clue into the moon's thermal history, which I do find kind of interesting.
Which kind of makes sense
right,
a little bit.
If it's on the far side of the moon, it's usually on the quote-unquote dark side of the moon, which means it has a tendency to be colder there, and yet volcano, which is kind of cool. So something, again, I'm sure our chat room knows way more about this than we do.
We figured we'd talk about it, and then you can go to the article that was in the lower third, and then you can read all about it, and it's pretty sciencey science.
I got about like 4 sentences in, and if it wasn't for the ad from Google that was telling me all about beautiful women I think I would have. I mean, I stopped. I couldn't do it anymore. Something about beautiful.
Yeah, and they're
Chinese
correcting
women,
you.
that's
The
all I
moon
really
is
know.
not colder on that side of the moon. It's always dark to us, but it's not always dark because it can point towards the sun.
It can point towards the sun.
Yes. I mean, it gets just as much sun as the other side of the moon does.
We just never see it.
We just never see it. You got it. So there you go. Interesting volcano
Well,
on the.
when the sun isn't pointing at it, it's colder.
Well, that's true. That's a true statement. Yes, that is correct. There you go.
I was half right. And I'm getting an SSME table for our new apartment.
As
For all you longtime viewers out there.
Wow, that's old school Spacevidcast
Yeah, it
right
is.
There. Gonna make a engine
A little
table.
bit of a comeback.
When you finally, all right, so the story goes, way back in the first season, we were talking about the space shuttle main engine, the retiring of the space shuttle.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, because we would take this, they were saying we were going to take the space shuttle main engines out and you can buy them separately.
Right.
And you said, I'd like to buy one and...
I want to make it like a coffee table or side table out of one of the SSMEs.
And I don't think she had a concept of the
Space shuttle
size
main engines.
of the space shuttle
The
main engine.
main engines that thrust that
Got a good laugh from that.
gigantic vehicle up into the air. That somebody once told me I could live out of. Actually, I could use it as an apartment as
Not
opposed
that
to
big.
a side table. Well, maybe
Not
it's
that
a
big.
studio,
Small
single
apartment.
apartment.
All right. Let's close.
Anyway.
We are clearly ending this show.
Wow.
We're done. We've checked out. We're done. We're like last show in Minnesota. We're done.
No, that's not entirely true. Did you want to talk about big rocks from the sky?
Yeah. So hang on. Here's how I'm going to prove that we're done. The title of this is actually in the wiki and on the banner. Here you go. It's actually called "Big and Awesome Space Rock Found."
Because it is. Look at that.
I didn't even try to give it a clever
First
name.
of all, it looks like a mud monster, which is amazing as far as I'm concerned.
Kind of looks like a giant tongue, right?
Yeah.
Blah.
Okay, no, that's the granite, you stooge. It's the other
No,
one.
no, I know, but it looks like it's sticking out from the granite would be the.
Okay. Anyhow, this is a massive, massive chunk of meteorite that was found in China. And I would totally try to pronounce the province,
don't
but
even try.
Lord knows I can't do it. In any case, it's very, very cool. It's one of the largest that we've ever found. One of the largest ones, well, the largest one we've ever found is 60 tons. This is closer to 25 to 30 tons. So it's up there. And it is an iron composite, which is very cool. And it just has to be sort of confirmed as a meteorite. And I love this, by the Center for Meteorite Studies at Arizona State University. Not really sure what makes Arizona so special.
Well, they have a Center for Meteorite Studies.
But apparently,
Right,
they
so
need to
there
go
you go.
out to China. Oh darn! Hey boss, guess what? Need a little Chinese vacay to go out there and verify that it is a gigantic chunk of iron meteorite. But that's very, very cool. And it is said to be, I think it was 4.6 billion years old.
Billion. Some
Something
of the
along
oldest,
those
isn't
lines.
it? I mean,
Yeah,
it's scary old.
Yeah, because most meteorites were formed close to about 4.6 billion years ago, give or take a few billion, when the solar system was formed. So anything that we've discovered recently, it's kind of impressive that we haven't seen this thing before. It's kind of just been sitting there looking like a mud monster the whole time.
A little bit.
Under
Although,
some granite.
it looked right around the size of a coffee table, I thought. Like a large
New
coffee, right?
idea for coffee table.
Mental note.
4.6 billion year old meteorite. Right next to my SSME apartment. All right, so anyway, I just thought it was really cool. Iron nickel composition. Sorry, I apologize for I said iron.
That's the more found meteorite.
It is
Right, so it's
it
like
is more
when
common.
you go to a what are those, like a little rock store type things?
Right.
You're like, I'd like to buy some meteorite, and you've got a little itty bitty piece that's like $9,000, or you've got a giant chunk that's $1.
Mm-hmm.
The giant chunk is going to be the iron.
Yeah, the iron nickel.
Yeah. So
Usually, yeah.
I may have exaggerated those
Still pretty.
slightly to make my
Don't
point,
care.
but you get the idea.
Still
So
older than I am, isn't it?
barely. Barely. I am in so much trouble for that. All right, I think that's our show. It's time for us to go into Spacevidcast After Dark. I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Once again, stay tuned to Spacevidcast Twitter channel, Twitter feed, Tweety Bird,
The Tweety Birds.
and we'll let you know when we're going to broadcast next. High probability that we will no longer be doing these shows at Friday 2 a.m. coordinated time. We will likely be changing these to weekend shows to better align with my schedule. And since we're going to be in a completely different time zone, we have to make sure that we try to optimize it so that the most number of people can watch the show live as possible, because it's way more fun when you watch with us.
Exactly. But there's plenty of reruns on our YouTube channel on spacevidcast.com. And we will continue to do space pods as we can. We do have a couple people helping us out with that. So you will still get stuff. And again, new space this weekend and Space Up LA next weekend.
Which is going to be awesomely tacular. We will continue to broadcast those. And we're trying to get, although this one is, I'm not having very good luck with finding a person to go out there. We're trying to get the Mars Society Conference streamed live, which happens to be the exact same weekend as Space Up LA.
Right.
They're overlapping. Which means we would have to send out a different crew to that. So if any of you are videographers or at least can run a video camera in the Texas area and would like to go to the Mars Society Conference.
Can't we just give Zubrin like a hat cam? Like iJustine hat cam?
That would be kind of, actually that'd be kind of cool.
Right?
Yeah. So anyhow, let me know, Benjamin at spacevidcast.com. On that note, thank you guys so much for watching. After Dark is up next, and we'll see you sometime in the future.